Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and talk about plug-in motorcycle tires. And this is a very controversial topic in virtually every area or aspect of motorcycling. And I'm going to give you some information on tire structure here because as you can see I cut into this one. We're going to look at that. We're going to actually plug a tire. We're going to go over some discussion on that, and I'm going to give you my personal feelings on it. So with that, let's get right to it. Alright folks, so like I said in the intro, plug-in tires is extremely controversial, and you will get basically two answers when you talk to somebody about it. The plugs are safe or they're not safe. Or if you kind of extrapolate that out, you're crazy to ride on a plug tire, or hell, I ride a tire that's plugged all the way down to the cords. So the net sum, and I'll tell you right up front, the net sum of how comfortable you are with a plug tire is just that, your comfort level. You got to remember that tire plugs, you will not find a dealership or anybody like that nowadays that'll do any plugging. If they do, they're doing it for you as a favor and probably, forget your name after you leave the shop. Joe who? Never heard of them. This is something you're going to be doing on your own. And this is, tire plugs are essentially designed as an emergency repair operation for if you're out in the road or out in the field, whatever you want to call it, and you pick up something in your tire, then you can plug the tire, air it back up with the appropriate air compressor or whatever you have with you, and then move on, and hopefully getting to a place where you can either have the tire properly repaired, if you can even find a motorcycle dealer that will do that, like in other words, repair it from the inside, because generally speaking, once you plug a tire like this, nobody's going to touch it. In the automotive tire area, that's absolutely the rule, and I just experienced this with my wife's CRV, where she picked up a screw in her right rear tire, and I tried to get it down to Tires Plus and a couple other tire places last weekend. Nobody could take her for a number of days, so I didn't want her to run around on the temporary spare, so I actually plugged that tire, and then she went down on Tuesday and we ate a new tire. So I knew that was going to be the case. So if you can find a shop that's going to repair these, the best thing to do with that is to not plug it. If you have a small leak and you're near a an urban area or a suburban area that has a tire, a motorcycle shop, whether it's a dealer or a independent that does tires, best thing to do is just keep airing it up if you can, and that's where TPMS really helps, because you can monitor the pressure. Get it to that place and say, hey, I got a small hole in a tire from a little nail or something. Can you dismount the tire and put a patch in from the inside? I don't know if anybody's going to do that either, to be honest with you, and there's probably two reasons for it. Number one, the liability. Number two, they want to sell you a tire. I mean, let's be honest, all right? They want to sell you a tire. So what I'm going to talk about here is how to do this, and we're going to discuss a little bit about my feelings in regards to how long you can really go on a plug tire. And, we're going to talk about how these tires are made, things like that. And I'm not a tire expert at all, but what I have here is a subject, which is a Dunlop 160/60 ZR17. It's a Sport Max, and this came off of a customer's, not his bike. He brought the wheel and a new tire over, and I dismounted it. And so I kept the tire around because I thought I wanted to do this on a video. So anyway, let's take a look. I cut this open. Now this is kind of your typical street bike tire of a, pretty decent quality. These Dunlops aren't cheap. Now, I'm not going to go over the individual, layers or plies of the tire, because you can do that yourself. Go online, you can educate yourself on it. What I'm pointing out here is, you see right across the main body of the main surface of the tire, you have that wire mesh part of the ply. And that's embedded, of course, in the rubber. Now, this part, in my opinion, is what makes tire plugs somewhat viable for even using longer term. Because when we go through here and we remove the offending screw or nail, and then we dilate it out with the dilator. Really, it's a, well, you'll see what I mean. And then we put a plug in. Those little wires grab that plug, and when you put a little bit of rubber cement, which I always recommend, if the thing is properly plugged, you know, you can actually ride these things quite a long way. I don't necessarily recommend you doing that. I'm just saying that if you wanted to, you could probably get away with that. And I know a number of riders, including myself. The concourse right there has got a plug in that rear tire in that Michelin PR4 GT from back in April, and that hasn't lost any significant amount of air, just the normal amount it would do, because, you know, these things are not 100% patent as far as holding air in. No tire is. So over a period of time you might lose a couple psi, especially with temperature variance, and so that thing has not lost a significant amount of air. Now, am I going to ride that tire all the way back up into the mountains? Probably not. All right, because if I'm towing my trailer or what have you behind the bike, I will probably spoon a new PR4 GT, because I want to keep it matched with the front on before I do that. But I could, and I know guys that do. I know guys that have plugged tires and they put oodles of miles on with no problems afterwards. So as I said before, this is really an exclusive decision based on your comfort level. If you're comfortable with it, then you can do it. All right, so anyway, let's go ahead and I'm going to shoot a screw in this tire. And that begs a discussion in itself here, is where is the no-go on plugging a tire? And essentially, anything that's close to the edge on the sidewall, forget about it. It's not going to work. Maybe right about here you might be able to get away with it, but if it's if it's rotating around, certainly into the sidewall, forget about it. All right, forget about it. But if you've got a, if you've got a screw or something into the main part of the tire, the center part of the tire, which generally is the place you get one. You get it either over to one side or the other, or dead nut center, or into one of the recesses in the tread. You can plug that. All right, so let's go ahead and shoot a screw in. We'll talk about that, and then we'll, because these things are not just a screw going in and out. They wiggle around in there when you're riding on them for a while till you pull over and fix them, and then we'll go ahead and we'll plug it. All right, I'm going to take this little drywall deck screw, whatever it is, and we'll shoot it in, but I'm going to try to do it at an angle, because these things hardly ever go in straight. They're almost always at an angle when they're buried in there. Not always, but sometimes. We're going to put it right down into one of these recesses in where the tread is, the profile of the tread is in the tire. And we'll try to go a little bit of an angle with it. And of course, it's at a little bit of an angle. That's about typically what you find. Now, you got this screw in your tire and you're riding on it for a while. What's happening is it's moving around, because when it comes around and hits the road, and it's wallowing that hole out a little bit more. And so it may actually distort the hole more than what we're going to be looking at in this demonstration. Once you identify the offending thing, and of course you can do that a number of ways when you're on the road. It's pretty easy on a motorcycle, especially a rear wheel. We have a center stand. You pick the bike up on the center stand and spin it, you find it. But first thing we got to do is get it out. So what you want to do is you want to have a tire repair kit set up. And I'll show you some subsidiary parts of mine. Oh, this ain't part of it. This is part of it. What I do is I have my tools, and we'll go into that here in a minute. My goo, which is the rubber cement, the plugs or the worms, a pair of dikes, and a pair of pliers. All right, now you might want to put a screwdriver in there, because when we have a screw, there's no need to pull that out directly. You do more damage to the tire, you want to unscrew that. But generally speaking, somebody usually has a little bit of a repair kit on their bikes, whether it's the OEM or something else. I carry a tool bag with me, actually. So if it's a screw like this, you simply want to unscrew it. If it's a nail, then what we do is we take a pair of dikes like this, wire cutters. My dad used to call them dikes. I'm not trying to be funny here. That's what they're called. And you just lever it out, okay? Now, sometimes these things are buried into the surface as well, especially if it's a nail or something. And then you kind of have to dig in there a little bit to get it. But once you get a purchase on it with a pair of wire cutters like this, you can work it out. And as you pull it out, if it resists, try going in a different direction, because sometimes if they're flush with the surface, it's hard to tell what direction they're in. And then it makes it easier when you pull it in the direction in which it's pointed inwards through the rubber. And then make a mental note as to what direction that is, so when you shoot the plug in, you're following that hole. Alright? So we're just going to take this screw out using a screwdriver. And this is what I did on my wife's CRV last weekend. It had a big long roofing screw in it, because she works for a roofing company. So guess who's paying for the tire? Yep. And they offer too. We didn't even, press the issue. You can put plugs in tires that have air in them, these tubeless tires. Now what I would do is I'd leave some air in it. Now a certain amount of air may be gone already, but the bottom line is you don't want this thing to full air pressure, because it's going to be harder to push the plug in. But you also don't want it to collapse, which is going to be a difficult task for us here without any, it's not mounted to a rim and I can't pressurize it. So you kind of want to have some air in it. And I can't really tell you what that is, but generally speaking, by the time you go to plug these things, you're about at the air pressure you need to facilitate that. So, you be the judge of that, okay? Now we're going to go over here and we're going to talk about these tools a little bit. First thing you want to do is, you don't want to leave your worm pusher tool like this. You want to make sure these are clean. So before you go on your trip, take some brake clean and clean these off, because these things are sticky. It's almost impossible to get the worms into them, the plugs. So I just haven't had a chance to do this yet, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I wanted to show you this. So we're going to go ahead and off camera just get these cleaned up with some brake cleaner, go over what they're for and how they're used, and then we'll go ahead and shove it in. Alright, I got it clean, and it's a good idea too to keep some gloves, disposal gloves in your kit, because this is going to get messy. And you're going to get it all over your hands, the rubber cement, the stickiness off of the worms, and everything else. And if you don't have any place to wash your hands, or you forgot to put rags in your pack, which I'd recommend as well, then you're going to put your glove back on, or just grab the grips, and you're going to transfer it everywhere. It's kind of almost like, it's kind of like Never Seas. You look like the Tin Man after you put like a pinhead amount of Never Seas onto something. It ends up everywhere, So it's kind of like that. It just spreads everywhere. So this is the tool that we use for putting the plug in itself. You can see that the end is split right there. So when you put it in and pull it back out, it doesn't pull the plug back out. So it's kind of a one-way deal, all right? You can see that a little bit better there. This tool is really called, I don't know what they call it, but it's a dilator. Now, I like these kind with the knurls on them. That's strangely satisfying. And the reason why is they have a different tool that are kind of serrated almost, like almost a twisty threaded thing. Those are a real bitch on these tires, because I have a set in the concourse right there. In that bag you're looking at right there that doesn't have this one. This is from my other kit that I actually keep on the sidecar rig. I normally put this one in that kit, but I didn't on the last trip. But luckily one of the guys did have one of these. We tried that serrated one, didn't work. It's a pain in the ass. What this does is it essentially prepares the hole, because of these, you have those pieces of, that metal meshing is part of the ply right there. All right, what it does is it kind of dilates that and pushes it out of the way. But this stuff is pretty springy, so it's not going to push it away where it goes away and you never see it again in that hole. It just moves out of the way slightly, all right? And then when you dilate it enough, and again, you want to follow the direction that the offending item was in. That's why you make a mental note of it. So if it was to the left and this way, you'd want to do it that way or the other way. So you want to kind of go in the direction that it was in, all right? That's what this is for. I lost track of where I put the screw. Sometimes that happens. That's why you got to pay attention to these things. When I'm doing them for a customer, I mark them with a silver marker. But, if you're on the road, you're not going to have one with you. So I just shot a new screw in, or new spot rather, pulled it back out. So let's get back to it, shall we? All right, so what we want to do again is we want to dilate this hole. Now, you want to, make sure you note what direction it went in. So if it's this way or that way, you want to follow that direction. So what we're going to end up doing with this is we're going to get it in and dilate that hole. And this is not the easiest thing to do when it's not inflated. These tires are pretty hardy, my friends. All right. Now that noise you hear is you're going past that steel belt, part of the layers of the plies of the tire. Alright? Best thing you can do on this is to move it back and forth, wiggle it around, and you're just dilating it out. You're making a spot for the plug to go, because the diameter of that screw is way smaller than what that plug is going to be able to accommodate, because you're trying to put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. So in this case, you're increasing the bag to about 8 pounds, okay? So that's what we're doing here. We're going to open this thing up a little bit. And again, it's easier when there's a little pressure in it, of course. That's why I mentioned that. Of course, you're going to have air coming out. And now you're going to be ready to put the plug in. Now, these plugs are not going to work on anything that is not round as far as the damage to the tire. If you have a piece of metal that was, let's say, triangle shaped, that slit the tire like a knife or a laceration and punctured the tire, they're not going to work. I shouldn't say they're not going to work. They're not going to work well. There have been cases, and we ran into one on that trip up in April, where that's exactly what happened to somebody we came across that had actually a slit from a piece of metal. It was almost like a razor knife, piece of a razor knife. And I believe we put the guy that was doing it, one of our group helped him out because they didn't have any kits or anything. Put like 2 or 3 plugs in it, and it actually held air, and the tire was significantly damaged, distorted. Sidewall was bad, whole bit. But we were in the middle of nowhere, and no cell service, and we had to help them out. We really wanted to help them out. They were able to ride that bike far enough to get to a place and to call for help, and then ultimately the next day get a tire put on it. And it did hold air. Again, the tire was scrap, but it held air. And I can't remember how many plugs he put in, 2 or 3, maybe 2, and it did work. But generally speaking, these are designed for round insults to your tire, a round hole. So now what we're going to do is we're going to prepare it. And this is the biggest pain in the ass there is right here, folks. Let me tell you what. Because this little slit ain't that wide, and these plugs are wider than that. They just want to grab freaking hold of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to help ourselves along. That's why you want a pair of pliers. We're going to take the plug off of this sticky shit that it's on. All right, there's your plug. And you want to replace these periodically, folks. Don't leave like an ancient one in there that's getting ready to crumble. So, every couple of years or so, you want to replace them. So what I do is I'll take this pair of pliers, and I'll give one end a really good squeeze to flatten it out. Just like this. Just flatten that sucker out. Otherwise, it is really hard to get through. And then we're going to try to get it through, and all you need to do is get a little bit of it through like that. See, we got a little bit through. Can you see that? Can you see it? Can you see it? Grab the pliers again, and we'll pull it through the rest of the way. Like that. Alright, once you get it through a good point, you can go back to your hands usually. And you want to pull it through about you want to pull it through halfway, not about. You want it halfway. You don't need to measure with a micrometer, but you want it halfway. Okay, so now the plug is ready to go in. So what I do next is I take a piss on it. No, I'm kidding. What I do next is, you got to have lubricant. And that's what your rubber cement helps you do here. Now, I've been on another, we were on another trip. We plugged a bunch of tires. But let me tell you what, folks. Another trip where our lead rider, the same one that performed the plugging for the story I just told you a couple of years ago, picked up, it was actually a 6mm sized body bolt, with an 8mm head. It was a body bolt, like a GM body bolt, that has the big flare washer built into it in his rear tire. And we pulled out his plug kit, which had a little tube of this stuff, and it was drier than a popcorn fart. So we ended up going up the road. I went up the road and found a hardware store, and we were able to replace that so we could get him back on the road. So make sure your rubber cement is not dry. So what we're going to do here is take some rubber cement out. These are the kind that have the brush in the cap. And we're just going to go ahead and give it, and I'm going all over the tire here, I don't care. You wouldn't normally do this if you're out in the field. You don't want to get it on the tire, but I'm trying to stay in shot here for you guys. Not that it would cause any problems. Alright, throw a little bit right there, and you want to shove it. I'm going to do it hold it from the back side here, because sometimes this is a real bitch. Yeah, can't get that one in. I need to dilate it some more. What it's doing is it's grabbing that steel belt, and it just won't go past it. There it goes. This is much easier, folks, when there's air in it, but this is for demonstration purposes only. Now we got it through. I'm going to push it a little bit more. Don't push it too far. Leave about a ½ inch or so sticking out. See that? And then take this tool and give it a quick pull, just like that. Don't pull it slow, pull it quick. Now what that does is it doesn't have a chance really to pull it back out. And now you got a bunch of goo and stuff here from the plug. That's fine. And your tire is now plugged. Like I said, it's a lot easier when there's air in the tire because I don't have any structure to back this up, which is why I'm doing a reach around on it. But, whew, yeah, that's how you get them in. Now, it's not unusual, again, not unusual to have to redilate that. That's why you do it a bunch of times. Because, like I said, when it goes in and it grabs that steel belt, it doesn't want to go in. So now that it's in, let's get a light and we'll take a look at it from the inside so you see what it looks like from the inside when these things are installed. Alright, so that's how she looks on the inside. And so there you go. Now if you really pay attention to where that plug comes around that rubber, that sumbitch is tight. You saw how hard it was to get in. So you dilate it out just enough, and of course you can only really dilate it the size of the tool that dilates it. And then you shove it. And after you shove it, you got it in. Now, some guys will tell you to cut these off. I don't really like to do that. I like to let them smush out and just wear off. But if you are so inclined, at least leave at least about a ¼ inch on them. And it depends on how far you got it in originally when you put it in. But if that's why you have another reason why you have your wire cutters with you. So you can cut them down. I usually don't even cut them. I just let them wear down, and that's it. So, alright, so now this is what we're going to try. We're going to let this dry for a while, and then from the inside of the tire, we're going to try to pull it through and see how difficult that is. Because the chances are people are thinking, well, that plug's going to come out. Well, it ain't going to come out this way, folks. You saw how hard it was to get in. But maybe they're thinking it's going to be pushed further into the tire, and then you have a leak again. So let's let this cure up for a while and we'll start pulling on it and see just how strong that is in there. Because we got a good purchase. We can purchase out here too. I guess it would have been better to leave it longer. But either way, we got a really good purchase inside here. But we'll let it dry and then we'll see how that is. So while we're waiting for that to kick and cure up somewhat, we'll go over and do a little review of what I covered in this video. So remember, you can only plug essentially on the main outside radius of the tire. The closer you get to the sidewall, the less of an ability to plug that you have. And absolutely the sidewall's a no-no. The way I would explain it is, again, the closer you get to the sidewall, the more problematic your plug or less reliable your plug may be. Maybe, okay? That's just my take on it, all right? The best situation, and usually what occurs because of the footprint of the tire on the road, is that it happens in this section right here, and that's every one of them I've ever seen. That's the case. With it, I'm sure there's some exotic exclusions out there. So it has to be a round hole generally. Can't be something like a slit. They won't work really well. I mean, you could try it, but they're not going to work worth a damn in a slit. And then you remove the offending item, whether it's a screw or a nail. Note the direction it was in so you can follow that, dilate it in that direction. I find that to be the best way. I mean, you could dilate it opposite, but I think you're going to be spreading out them spread out. You're going to be spreading out them those steel belts away from where you really want to help capture, this thing capture on them, the plug. And so you know that's where you just make a note to do that, and then put your dilator and your plug in. And I know it look really hard. It is really hard sometimes to do these, but it's a lot harder because I've got no resilience here. So if you got a small screw like that and you take it out and you dilate it, you're going to make a bigger hole. As soon as you take that out, it's going to start losing air really fast. That's when you have your plug all gooed up, ready to go, and zap and start getting it in. And if you have to redilate it, pull it out, redilate it. Hopefully there's somebody with you to help out. They can re-goo your plug while you're doing that. Then you shove it back in and eventually you can get it in, okay? So that is, in a nutshell, the review. Okay, folks, she's been cooking for a while. Not long, but just a while. And, you know, when you run down the road and you start to heat the tire back up, that's all the better, because I'm not going to say it vulcanizes this. You know, I don't know a Vulcan thing about that, but I don't think it vulcanizes it, but it does help to kick the rubber up when it gets, the rubber cement rather, when it gets warm. So I'm going to reach in, and remember, there's a big section in here, a big length of it. You can see how long that is sticking in there. There's water in here because I had this out in the back of my truck, but that's pretty long. It's through about an inch. Did you hear about the guy that was teaching his girlfriend how to read the tape measure? First thing she asked was, she goes, "How long is 8 inches?" And he goes, "That long." All right, we're going to grab a hold of this and pull on it. I'm pulling on that as hard as I can, and it ain't going anywhere. That is in there, folks. I could probably pull it out with a tool like that, but it is awfully hard as well. So it is in there. So I don't think it's going to go out, and I know it's not going to go out. I've never seen one thrown, that's for sure, and I've never seen one fail, actually. I've never seen a tire plug properly installed in a hole in a tire that was made for these plugs, a round hole from a nail or a screw or what have you. Generally a round hole, that is. I've never seen one of these plugs fail. And like I said, I know guys that have gone thousands and thousands of miles after they plugged a tire and run the thing down to the cords. Now, I'm not recommending that you do that. I want to make that very, very clear. My position is that tire plugs are an emergency repair only. They are designed to get you to a spot, or get you out of a spot and to a place that you can have the tire replaced. And again, once you plug them, they're going to replace it anyway. You probably have run into this if you've been motorcycling in any length of time, where either you know somebody or you yourself have picked up something in the tire, and you ask, maybe they have asked the tire place to repair it, and they go, "No way, we don't repair tires. Too much liability." They put a new one on, and that's fine. That is my ultimate recommendation in a video like this, is to use it for what it's intended, as an emergency repair, to get X amount of miles, there's an X, to wherever you need to go to get the tire replaced, whether it's a motorcycle dealership, an independent shop, or one of those cycle gears, or whatever it is. All right, then you can have the tire properly fixed, which is replacement. Now, I'll tell you, folks, I think the best thing that you can have on a motorcycle is your tire pressure monitoring system. A lot of guys on the older bikes are going, "I don't feel like messing with replacing the sensors or the batteries when they go dead." I disagree with that vigorously, because the reason why I saw my tire going down on that last trip was on my display on the front of the concourse, where my fat face is actually facing, looking at. I keep those two numbers up on the screen, which is one of the selections that you can make for front and rear tire pressure. And what I did was I was watching a decay of the tire pressure in the rear wheel, the rear tire, over a period of time that was just going like 1 pound and then another pound, and was over a period of 15-20 minutes. It was down like 4 or 5 pounds, and that indicated to me that I had a tire leak. And so we pulled over, and sure as hell, that was the case. And ergo, that's why there's a plug in that tire. So if you have a TPMS system on your bike, maintain it and make sure it works, because especially after you plug a tire, you want to watch that tire pressure very, very closely. Because again, these are designed as an emergency repair item or operation, and you want to make sure it maintains pressure while you're getting from where the incident occurred to a place that you can have it replaced. All right, folks, that's about it. Now, you're going to have a bunch of people that are going to tell you that don't ever use a tire plug, or a bunch of people that will tell you you can use a tire plug till the tire basically turns to dust. And then you'll have an equal amount of guys that say to use it the way I've described in this video as an emergency use only. So, again, it's up to your comfort level as to how far you're going to ride with a plug in the tire. My official position as far as my business and my personal motorcycling experience and feelings, comfort level, is to use them only as long as necessary and then have the tire replaced. I do my own tires, so I did take the chance and rode all the way back from the North Georgia mountains, towing a trailer behind the concourse behind me here with a tire plug in the rear tire, and had zero problems. But that is my choice, and I assume that risk and liability. If a customer came in and said they wanted a tire plugged, I would not do it. I would tell them they need to get a new tire, because other shops will not do it. As I said before, it's too much liability. But for you yourself, get yourself one of these kits. Make sure that you keep the rubber cement up, that it's not dried up, and make sure your tools are clean and ready to go. Throw a pair of gloves in there, throw a rag or two in there, and then you'll be able to handle a tire problem, assuming you have a tire pump with you. Make sure you got one of those if you're on the road somewhere. Hopefully I'll see you on the road somewhere, but until then, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Doesn't cost you a dime, helps me out. Ding the bell on the channel, and also subscribe. You get notified when I put more stuff up. I got another one right here to my left that's coming up shortly, and I think you're going to really like that one. Let's just say that it's pretty old. Not as old as me, but it's a pretty old machine. So thanks for watching, guys, and remember, don't just repair, restore. Catch you on the next video.